I've had the privilege to be in many rooms where incredibly clever people shared stories, set strategies, and defined visions. In these rooms, I'm the person who says the least, but I'm listening the hardest. You may not hear me say a word, but you'll likely remember my version of the events that take place. You see, I hold in my hand the magical tool that will create the historical record of that event. See that person way back there? That represents me. I'm creating a visual account of the events of this conference, a live scribe that will eventually look something like this. Over the years, I've created a lot of these live scribes, and I've visualized some amazing conversations. In the process, I've been privy to the strategies, drivers, and challenges of many organizations across a wide array of industries, always with my trusty marker pen in hand. In recent times, I was called upon to live scribe a medical forum that discussed chronic wound care. Not knowing that much about wound care, I did my homework. I researched different bandage types and I practiced drawing them until I could capture them just right. You can imagine my dismay after all of this preparation when the biggest barriers to effective wound care, they emerged as awareness, education, and communication channels, not a bandage inside. Almost the exact same barriers I scribed a few months later for a financial services company looking to increase the financial literacy of their customer base. Imagine that for a moment. Two different organisations in two unrelated industries. So how could they be facing the exact same barriers? In 2017, I was in the room to hear a major resource company share two of the three exact same strategic goals as an independent kindergarten. Both were facing shifting industry expectations and needed to re-establish trusted brands in their communities. Both had extremely high quality service levels that they wished to use to greater effectiveness as they expanded their service offerings. I was in the room for both conversations and I drew both plans. Now, I could have shown the kindergarten's plan to the resource company ahead of time and saved the effort. I've come to know that even though the words were the same, the output alone would not have hit the mark without the accompanying conversation. Now, all of these experiences have taught me three main things. The first is how incredibly similar we all are. As humans, we are motivated, united, and moved by story. We can't help it. We've been making sense of things this way for thousands of years. The second is that visual storytelling is at its most powerful as a verb. It is an act of doing, and when we participate in it together, that's when the magic happens. There may only be one speaker at the front of the room, and I may be the only one with a pen, but we shared the experience of hearing the story unfold, and you watched my ink lines emerge to that soundtrack, and a piece of you is drawn onto my page. The third is the almighty power of the pen. Word processing software serves a purpose. Graphic design programs can create beautiful outputs, but there is something tangible and connective in the wonky lines of a pen on a page or a whiteboard. It is participatory, and it invites others to take part in the formation of the story. It's a draft asking for input, rather than a finished artifact resistant to criticism. It is a powerful tool of collaboration. What I've come to realise is that while this way of communicating is highly effective, we are seriously underutilising it in our workplaces, in our study, even in our relationships. We have this magical triad of practices that are inherent in all of us as humans: connecting dots, sharing stories, and making pictures. The very essence of visual storytelling and the very essence of our humanness. Throughout our evolution, these are the practices that we have used to understand ourselves, to interact with others, and to make sense of the world around us. So what makes it so powerful? For starters, narrative has a special effect on our brains. It releases a lovely little hit of dopamine, our happy chemical. It's like a hug for your mind. In addition to this, more than 50% of our brains are involved in visual processing, and a whopping 70% of our sensory receptors are in our eyes. That means that we can gain the sense of a visual scene in less than 1/10 of a second. As humans, we are genuinely wired for visual storytelling. Let me give you an example. I could tell you a statistic. A recent study has revealed a startling 45% of adults have admitted to cancelling plans with others in order to stay at home and binge watch TV, suggesting that on-demand TV is the latest addiction threatening our society. Now, I could just tell you that statistic, or I could also tell you a story about a guy I know. Let's call him Dave. Dave had been working in his role for a long time. The opportunity arose to take a new role with a new company. It was a big step up. And in the change from the old role to the new role, Dave managed to schedule for himself a full 14 days of Dave time. And he set himself some lofty goals. He was going to hike the local mountain trails. He'd been talking about it for years. Heck, he might even go skydiving. And he had plenty of mates who were willing to tag along. Now, on his first day of leave, Dave thought to himself, I should ease into this. I haven't had a break like this in a long time. I should give myself an easy start. So instead of strapping on his hiking boots, Dave phoned his mate, cancelled their plans, and sat down to watch an episode or two of that TV show everyone had been talking about, Game of Thrones. Long story short, Dave started in his new role 13 days later, having achieved none of the things that he set out to. Instead, Dave spent his entire break binge watching every single episode of Game of Thrones and growing a beard. Now, having heard both the original statistic and the story of Dave, what do you think you will remember? Now, let me add to that by showing you this cartoon drawing of Dave. What do you think you will remember now? The stat of binge-watching adults will likely be forgotten. You'll remember that there was a stat, but probably not the actual number. But the story of Dave will live on in your mind. And when you think about Dave, this is what you will see in your mind. A stat brought to life with a simple story and a simple visual can be a powerful thing. And all that it takes is some human interaction and a pen. So why aren't we tapping into this magical language more? We email each other from 2 desks away. We create jargon-heavy tomes of acronyms and bullet points rather than talk a problem through. We bamboozle each other with leveraged synergies in aligned chevrons that dare not stray from the brand-approved colour palette. Our workplaces have been designed this way. Many of our main office spaces are set up as places of solitude where work is done quietly at a computer. Conversations are relegated to the meeting room, a scarce resource that must be booked in advance. The very design of many of the places we work drives us to a way of working that limits collaboration, especially the spontaneous and visual kind. But it could be different. We don't need artistic skills fit for the Louvre. We need conversation. We need shared stories and the ability to capture them in a simple doodle on a page or a whiteboard. We could be using this to plan, to resolve conflict, to stretch our thinking. There needn't be a slide deck in sight until we are ready to present a finished product. And the most exciting thing is that you already have the skills to do this. My challenge to you is to simply give it a try. Break free from a prison of automated smart art created in isolation and pick up a page and a pen. Sit down with your colleague, your study partner, your significant other, and reach understanding together on a page. You can harness the power of the pen without having to create a live scribe like I showed you earlier. Your role as scribe can be as active or as passive, as messy or as neat as you are comfortable with. Don't be afraid to make a mess on the page. Let the conversation and the doodling go where it needs to. Remember, it is the act of capturing the conversation, not the output alone, that holds the power. But you are effectively creating a time machine. For anyone who was present for that original conversation can take one look at your page and be instantly transported back to that time and place. This way of getting work done, of collaboratively building shared artifacts through the practices of visual storytelling, could change how we set strategies and define visions. By tapping into this very human way of communicating, we could change the way we work together for the better. In a time when technology is king, don't underestimate the power of the humble pen and the powerful role you take on being the one who holds it. You can be the quietest person in the room, but with a pen in your hand, you can be the one that shapes the story that lives on long after the ink has dried.